This is the Lucie Beatrix podcast. I'm a magazine cover girl turned competitive athlete, talking to some of the most hopeful, striving, and determined people that I can find. Today, I'm sitting with Justin Kantor, and we're just going to chat candidly. Go ahead and give everybody a synopsis of who you are.
Who am I? I wake up and ask myself that question every day. I grew up in Florida, and I got really into music and started a band in high school, then got really into classical music somehow and moved to New York and decided that more people should love classical music. So I, with a partner, opened up a music venue in a historic space in Greenwich Village with the secret mission of presenting classical music alongside of all the other genres out there, everything from indie rock to jazz to hip hop, you name it. And did that for about a decade, and just maybe almost 15 years, I should say. The pandemic happened, and I've been kind of really passionate about this technology product called Venue Pilot, which is an events logistics solution for independent venues based on my experience running Le Poisson Rouge, the name of the venue that I had. And I'm just kind of like pumped, kind of working with this indie startup, and
cool.
That's kind of where I'm at
Well,
right now.
Moments before we started recording, we had to censor your shirt because we wanted to make it appropriate or make this show accessible for anyone. But his shirt says classical as F. But it's really cool because when I think of you, because you're my friend, I think of Justin as like this punk rocker turned entrepreneur, more emphasis on the punk rocker side, because you are an entrepreneur. Your company Venue Pilot is what your focus is, but you're kind of like this cool, going against the status quo guy. And I feel like that shirt speaks to that, because classical as F is pretty cool.
Thanks. I was, it's use the term punk rocker, and it's funny because I don't know if I would identify myself as like a punker, but like
punk means
punk
going
rocker,
against the
like
grain,
going against
right?
the grain. That's punk. Yeah, totally. That's how you
and I feel like when you were coming up in Florida, at least from what I know about you, you were in a punk rock band, right?
Yeah, it was like no wave, rockabilly, little bit of punk rock in there. I would say that it was. Yeah,
it's kind of
we
like
played the four chords.
Like what is the definition of punk? It means like going against the man, right?
Yeah, I guess you could say that about all the genres. What is jazz?
Right.
What is punk? But
yeah.
I think I get what you mean.
Because I feel like you're like kind of a punk entrepreneur, if you think about that. Like it's the going against the man of like the way in which you've kind of carved out like this life for yourself.
Yeah, I guess from a pretty early on stage in my life, I didn't really feel the need to fit within it's like societal norm, I guess you could say. And I almost found it really quite hilarious. Anything that was absurd, anything like absurdist comedy growing up, I just thought it was hilarious. And I just loved to emulate it kind of in life and found that really funny. And I think that might be part of why just a group of really close friends growing up. I went to like a K through 12. So most of my childhood, I had the same friends from like kindergarten all the way till actually they were my band mates in high school. So I guess that gave me like this comfort zone to just do my own thing and not feel like I needed to blend in with like the larger society.
The cool kids, yeah.
Or whatever.
So yesterday I had therapy during my lunch break at the photo studio. And I've actually been going to therapy for the past 3 months pretty religiously. Like every Friday noon, I sneak out of the photo studio and go find a conference room and just do my virtual teledoc therapy. And it's the first time in my life that I've done this, but I've been seeing so many positive changes. And it's funny because before I started going to therapy, I kind of turned to my friends to be my armchair therapist or my the person that I would go to about unpacking all of my problems and going through just trying to like figure out how to live my life. But luckily, now that I have a therapist, I can take away that burden from you, because you were kind of that role for so long, or the person that I called when I felt like I needed to talk about life.
It's nice.
And
nice.
So I'm just curious, do you feel like you've noticed a difference in me from going to therapy, like starting like 3 months ago? Like, do you see a difference, or do you like feel it as a friend? Like, I always assume that I'm a better friend because I've now started going to therapy, but I'm curious from your perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely feel like it's been really great and positive. I think maybe I see that there's been sort of a perspective shift, if that makes sense, in the way that you're approaching life. That I think in a way that's really positive. That I think that probably has something to do with that. Yeah. I mean.
Yeah, and I think that like the pros and cons to therapy for so long, I didn't really understand. People always were saying you should go to therapy. Therapy will change your life, but I didn't have the right. I don't know. I just didn't have the right perspective of it. I thought only certain kinds of people went to therapy. But now that I'm in it, I can't imagine not being in therapy. And I start to crave it, where I like by the end of the week, I'm like, oh yes, I get to like go talk about all these problems that I'm dealing with and get it off my chest. And then having it regurgitated back to me from the perspective of someone who knows how to process problems. I think it's really valuable. Yeah. But that said, my therapist asked me something in the beginning of our session yesterday, which was kind of interesting. It stuck with me. But he said, how would you define cool? And I took a second and I was thinking, that's a great question, because what is cool? Why is he asking me this? Because I thought that was also an interesting like perspective of like, why would he want me to talk about what I think is cool?
Yeah.
Because I think it's clearly at the forefront of my mind, but I'm wondering, since you are cool.
I mean, that's definitely an opinion.
In my mind, I consider you a pretty cool person. You had this amazing music venue that was very defining for a lot of different artists' careers. The likes of St. Vincent and Coco, Rosie and Regina Spektor were playing there. So I just want to know from your perspective, what's cool?
What's cool? It's an interesting, I guess when you think about it, it depends on the frame, like your framework, like frame of mind. Cause like the way that you said, oh, it's cool because you did X, Y, and Z, that most of that stuff that you mentioned had some sort of impact on others, right? So,
yeah,
so is that what cool is? Having influence or impact on others, or a sense of people looking up to you, or, you know, thinking that, oh, that's someone I want to emulate. Cause that could be considered cool. I guess another way is feeling like you're fitting in, right? Which a lot of people feel like, oh, you're cool. Like if I wore my red tracksuit, because I'm like, I don't know, I got really into like Bruce Lee recently. I bought a tracksuit, a couple of them from brucelee.com. It's a good pitch, I guess, but like, yeah, it's not cool wearing, like a lot of people will be like, yeah, that's probably not cool wearing that. But for me, it's like, I just want to wear it. I don't really care. And I think sometimes some people would be like, oh, that is cool that you would just wear that. Mm-hmm. While other people would be like, that's like the least cool thing. Never wear that around me ever.
Right.
You know, and so it's like,
the antithesis.
What is that?
I think that sometimes that is cool, is just having the confidence to stand on your own and not have to be answering to anybody. And I think about this a lot with the fashion industry.
Yeah.
Because in fashion, so often it's about surprise of what's new. I mean, even in the music industry, these labels that are ready to sign a new artist. I remember talking to somebody once who was working at Sony, and he was just like, whatever hasn't been done before, that's brand new, that's what we're looking for. Not the most talented. It's the person who's doing something completely unexpected. And so I think that that could kind of speak to what is cool as well, of what is brand new and fresh and hasn't been done before, and what is somebody doing that isn't following what they've seen. But at least that's my take. Or like, I don't know, being radical and having a sense of a really strong sense of expression, so whatever that is, to like show, but then having it be one of a kind. But
Yeah, I mean, I guess the part though that I wonder about is the new, fresh. I think everything's been done. I mean, if you, especially if you look at art, and, you know, everything has been thought of and done. It's just sort of like
I don't agree with that. Look at like NFTs and like this virtual digital kind of like that kind of stuff. That seems like a new form of art to me.
Yeah, I guess you could see it as a new form of art, but you could also you could also really easily relate it to pop art as well. And like,
yeah, but I mean, I think it is like the next. It's like the next iteration of pop art is this digital currency that I feel like that is a form of modern art.
Maybe. Well, that's the thing. Like when something is sort of reinvented, it's still taking a lot of. I think there's a lot of historical context that you can apply to whatever this stuff is, like the genre is. Like, I mean, in music, like if you just think about maybe you could or visual art, like that's maybe a way of a technology of creating like a sense of provenance to an artwork that's digital that we didn't have before. But like, what does that really mean? Like the art itself, like, I'm sorry, but that's when, like, I was like, oh, I want to buy an NFT for my sister for Mother's Day, because she's kind of in that world. She's doing a lot of stuff with it. So I went online to like pick out an NFT for her. And I never like really bought one or before, and I just couldn't get myself to do it. I was like, I am not paying. Like, if I saw something that just an image even that was like really inspiring and cool, like cool, there's that word, but cool to me, like something that I was like, oh, that just seems good. Mm-hmm. I would have maybe dropped like $100 on it or something. But I'm looking at like a cartoon character, like with a prop, basically, that's going for thousands and thousands of dollars. But this is what
people said about Andy Warhol's Campbell's soup. Like, oh, it's just a Campbell's can of soup. It's going for thousands of dollars, but that's kind of part of it.
Or is it just like basically adult trading cards, like garbage pail kids for adults? Like, it to me, it's there's a value is like, even like Andy Warhol's art. What does it have to do with like how much it sells for? Like,
yeah, good point. No, that's an interesting
as like your own personal relationship to it. Like,
yeah, you know? I have been trying to wrap my mind around this world. And speaking of cool, of what people think is cool and what all the cool kids are doing is talking about this stuff like crypto and NFTs. And I don't want to be one of these people who looks at things and goes, oh, I don't understand it. It doesn't make any sense. Therefore it's, not valuable. I think every little subgroup or, trend, I want to know about what's going on. And that's how I feel about NFTs and like this whole world. So I went to Ape Fest, which is kind of the fashion week of Bitcoin or fashion week of cryptocurrency and NFTs. And I didn't know what I was getting myself into. I was just invited randomly because some of the people I'm hanging out with are really into this world. And so as an observer, like a fly on the wall, I wanted to see what was going on. And, asking questions and really trying to get it. Because I don't want to be an elder, like looking down at the youth and thinking that I'm like above it or something. Because that's the beginning of aging, I think, is when you don't want to know what's new and fresh. I think the same is with music too, because if you think about it, like, you know how like, oh, kids today and their rock and roll, like, I don't want to be that way with whatever is coming up in the world. So anyway, I try to wrap my head around all this stuff, and I am confused for sure. But I also do see it as, if I think about the currency itself as seeming like artwork, that's the only way that I can kind of get it and see that, okay, they're basically trading art, or like these bored apes, these cartoons of the bored apes, the different variations. There's like, it's like seeing the currency itself as like kind of like its own art.
I don't see any art there. I see commerce. I see access. I see... yeah, I mean, from a business perspective, value is just what someone else is willing to pay for it. Like, if some idiot, sorry, I mean, to the people that do it, but is willing to spend a lot of money on something like that, and there's no other idiot, quote unquote idiot, like, willing to spend more for it, then that was not a smart purchase. I mean, from a financial perspective.
But if it does have value, like, so right now, obviously, Bitcoin's like plummeting. A lot of these cryptos are not doing well. But if it does have value, isn't it worth?
Do you think anyone that has one of these Bored Ape images bought it because they just really love that image and they thought that that image, like, doesn't matter if the price goes up or down, like they just wanted, they felt a connection to this image and it meant something to them beyond the financial.
Yes, I
Really?
do. Because they use them as their profile picture. So once they get these Bored Apes, it's like a certain verified JPEG or something that then they can use as their profile pictures to like be their avatar. That's like a...
Isn't that sort of just like wearing like a diamond
Chanel
crusted
dress or something?
Like,
yeah. But I think that that's like this new version of having an avatar of something that you visually find interesting, that you want to represent yourself, is, especially in the social media era, like having that, that's something that's like really struck me, is they buy these and then they use them as their avatar to then present to the world, this is what I'm about. And I started looking at all the different variations.
They're presenting it to a very small world of other people that are into this.
Yeah, but I feel like
technology.
I find it just like interesting. So like this is something that I'm like investigating because I'm curious about it. And I looked at all the different variations of these Bored Apes and stuff, and I'm like, people are obsessed with this. So I wanted to know what they are. Why is it a Bored Ape? Like why, like what is it? So that's the curiosity.
When is a Bored Ape just going to be a Bored Ape?
What do you mean?
I mean, I'm just saying it's like sort of a joke, like sometimes a cigar is just a cigar. Like, what is this ape thing? Like, is it really about that? It's the technology. It's like a trading card. It's a coin. It's not the actual item itself. I just don't like. I don't really. I mean, maybe, but I feel like it's more of a status symbol than it is.
Yeah,
sort of
I think it is.
actual.
But that's the same with like when there are T-shirts that say Supreme.
Yeah,
it's a white T-shirt and it says Supreme.
Yeah,
it's just a white T-shirt.
It's marketing and
and so like I feel like it's kind of similar to that.
Yeah, but
it's cool. And cool. I think I look at that stuff and I always want to understand it.
Yeah,
and that's kind of how I felt about this Ape Fest. I just wanted to like learn about it.
I think it's very interesting. I mean, there's going to definitely be a lot of unique uses for NFTs, and just the concept of digital provenance, I think it's clear that there's potential for that. I mean, I was thinking with like, even with Venue Pilot, just the concept of being able to, let's say you go to back in the day you had,
explain what Venue Pilot is.
Oh, so it's a technology
it's your
ecosystem basically for live music. So it's the back end side, like the person advancing the shows, booking the shows. They would be using this program to help facilitate that. But then there's also a ticketing component. There's also a component for the ticket buyer, and a way for a lot of other third-party technologies to integrate into this platform. And NFTs is definitely something I've been thinking a lot about and how it could be valuable. And I don't know if I'm giving away any trade secrets. It's classic for me to do stuff like that. But I'm thinking like, all right, back in the day, everyone had hard tickets, and some of them were actually quite beautiful, like with beautiful foil designs. And you'd go to a show, and you'd go to the ticket taker, they'd rip it, and you'd keep your ticket stub. And some people that are major fans of bands would keep them for a very long time. They'd have value. That's personal value from this ticket stub, right? So I was like, well, maybe that could happen with an NFT somewhat digitally. So when you check in, your ticket gets digitally minted as it's ripped or whatever, and then it becomes an NFT that only you have, and it's valuable to you. It's not a trade. It's not something that you would necessarily initially think of as something that has financial value, but it has sentimental value. But I was thinking like, okay, so now let's say you're a person that goes to a lot of shows, and you've collected these NFT ticket types, right? And you had to actually show up and go to the show. Well, what if a special music venue or a club opened up where you needed to have a certain amount of these NFT minted ticket stubs to get in? You'd know anyone else that went to that club. There's no posers there. They all went to concerts.
That's interesting. So this is an example of how an NFT or this kind of thing could be really defining of cool.
But that's not the art. For me, like the art is still like that concert that happened live that someone experienced.
Right. It's what it represents. But that's like, that's the ticket stub. The ticket stub is not, it's not about like the color of the paper and the art of it. It's the thing that it represents.
Yeah.
And I think that that's what, all of this is like, it's just what the thing means, not the actual thing. So the Bored Ape is just a symbol, but it's what it means.
Yeah. But that's just not, that's commerce.
Yeah.
That's merchandising. I mean, I think there's definitely, you can argue just like anything, what is jazz, what is punk, what is art, you know, where that line is blurred between commerce and creativity and or whatever you want to consider art. And I guess you could, I mean, and that's something that, coming back to like an Andy Warhol, I think that it was very much concerned with, or you know, obsessed over, of like what is art. And you know, so I guess that kind of
art, I think, is anything you put a frame around, or like anything you put a frame around and then assign meaning to. So it is the second somebody puts something, a frame around it, and then says this means something, that's when it becomes art, at least to me. But so that said, so speaking about like art and influence and stuff and cool. I definitely have been grappling with this understanding of what is the difference between an influencer and someone who truly influences. And for someone like you, I wouldn't consider you an influencer, obviously, but that's not like in a slight. I mean, if somebody said to me like, you're not an influencer, and I'm like, good, like I don't want to be, but I do consider you as somebody of influence. Like, you are a tastemaker. You've influenced the music scene. You've shifted, you know, you took with your former venue, like you definitely transcended what people understand as classical meets rock, and with Le Poisson Rouge. And I feel like you have a lot of influence, but you're not an influencer. So what do you think the difference is? And what do you think the value of influencers could be, if that makes sense?
What comes to mind, first of all, I don't really even think I'm influential. I think what happens is the scenarios that have been I've been involved in maybe are become something that's influential or impactful. And I like even with the music venues, like I wasn't on stage, or very rarely on stage. And it was creating that space that allowed things to happen. And it's something that it allowed different musical genres and artists to have their place to be influential. And there is some sort of maybe influence I had to that environment that helped direct, maybe without my active participation in it, some involvement. And then other times I feel like I'm just with other people that are the influencers, but just by hanging out or participating in shared experiences with them, that I might be, our interaction has an impact on that, you know, that. And I think that's for probably everyone, right, in the world. And like, I think that there's a term I once I heard, and it's probably a lot of people know it, but for me it was a new term called eminence gris. Have you ever heard that? It's gray matter, and it's basically sort of conceptually it's like the people behind the curtains, you know, that are influential, that might. Like, if you think of like the political world, there's, you have the senators and you have the president, but there are a lot of people that actually their opinions have a big impact on that person's decision in process. And I feel like I'm sort of sometimes in situations or scenarios where I'm kind of like, I feel like, oh, I have a little bit of impact here. I mean, during the pandemic, you know, we had I was a founding board member of the National Independent Venue Association, which was the first time really music venues came together as an association. And you know, I wasn't the face of that organization by any means, but very involved in the background in you know, pretty much every aspect of the operations and how it flows, how the things people would communicate, some of the research, the story, how it's being told and why, and being part of shaping that. And it feels really valuable. So for me, that's like, I'm more interested in that than being sort of like in the front of the camera like this.
Yeah. And I think that speaks to me, and like the people I look up to that I consider big tastemakers, or the people that are influential, are the ones more behind the scenes. Even just in the industry, like when I was growing up in the fashion industry, just on set, like I'm the model standing on set and everybody's looking at me and I'm the one whose picture is going to be on the thing or whatever. But it's the people who were orchestrating the shoot, the art directors, the photographers, the stylists, that I was really fascinated by. And I'm like, these are the cool people. Creatives. And the ones that are not necessarily, that they don't have the need to be the face of the operation. And I think that's maybe what I've always been drawn to, are those people behind the scenes. But yeah.
Yeah. And for me, when I'm always looking for role models, I guess. And I guess you could say that that's the cool people for me. And I try to take what their best features that I want to sort of emulate and mirror in myself.
Totally.
So I'm always looking for that. Who are your
role model, or like who are you looking at as?
It really, a lot of different. Some of them are just people that no one know. You know, it's just people in my life that stand for something that, or it's not even maybe philosophically. It's almost more like the energy that they give off is an energy that I really respect and want to emulate, and outlook on life and a perspective, and it really is. It's not so much like anyone that people would know their names, like,
right? And
like
I think that's
like
it's interesting. Rich Roll was just talking about this on one of his podcasts about the mentor and how important it is to find a mentor, and whether or not you're in touch with them or not, but just like look up to them and see what they're doing and try to do what they do.
Yeah, or even sometimes imagine what they would be doing, even if it's
how would they take this situation?
Yeah, how would they deal? How would they handle this?
And I actually, when I was dealing with, so I would consider Rich Roll a mentor. I've met him. I've had dinner with him. We were acquaintances a while back. I mean, now I don't know if he would really remember me, but one thing that I encountered lately, when I've encountered certain obstacles, I've thought that, like, how would he handle this situation of dealing with criticism, or even, I mean, lately I had something go down where I did this Q&A anonymously on Instagram, where people can ask questions where I don't know who they are. And somebody didn't even ask a question, but they just wanted to tell me anonymously that I'm not an elite athlete, and it's my ego that I would even say that I am. And instead of just immediately thinking, okay, this person's trying to, like, put me down or something, I thought, what would Rich Roll say to this? Because here he is, he's an athlete and he's an established athlete, but probably wouldn't be considered elite. Like, his times are not like competitive, but he's done some things. He's seen some stuff out there as an athlete. And that, to me, it doesn't matter the time. I just go, wow, that's like, I wouldn't call him elite, but I would say that's notable.
Yeah.
And that's what I would recognize in someone like him.
Yeah.
So I kind of turned that around and thought, okay, so maybe this person's saying that technically I'm not elite, but what is the point? Like, what is the, why? And also, why is it affecting me that I'm being, and I tried to, like, spin it and think about how a mentor would.
Well, it's also sort of what that means in terms of your identity and how you relate to that. So, like, I guess on one level you could say, that New York Roadrunner Association, right? They probably have different time. Like, it's just like, to be considered elite runner by the New York Roadrunner Association, you have to run at this speed.
Right. And I think I did, like out of, I mean, I don't even think I should have entertained this too much, but I did Google to see, like, what would an elite 10K time be and stuff. And I felt like I was like, wait a minute, I think I've hit those times.
Yeah.
But at the same time, like, I know that I'm not the best. I'm not even close, but I'm just also like, I felt it was just a weird ego moment, because I'm like, no, I don't want to be this person who's wrapped up in, like, semantics of.
Yeah, it's semantics. I mean, are you the top 50 and, like, fastest woman in the world, or you're the top 500 fastest woman in the world?
And also, why is that important? It's not important.
What? Yeah, what's the point?
Something that somebody said too when this happened was, I posted about it, and somebody sent a message that said, it's the ethic behind it. And it's like getting out there at races. And even though when I did that Texas qualifier, when I've done these races that like everybody on that field is trying to get the Olympic standard or the Olympic trial standard for the 10K or something. And even if I'm coming in last place, getting to that starting point with those people and even being like within anything of that, it's still like kind of close enough. And I don't know, it's a weird place to be in, but I really do think about like Rich Roll and how he is, because he's not even competing that much. Like, and he's not in the podium or anything. Yeah. It's not about that. It's about the getting to that point and your starting point of like where you come from.
I mean, I think it's probably if you're identifying with the concept of being elite as something that is really important to you as a person, it's probably not gonna end well. Versus,
that's a good point.
You know, because that's basically one way or the other. Unless you're looking at something where it's like, all right, I want to hit this time, I want to make this happen, and I'm going to push myself and strive for it.
And the story leading to that
or
point.
Like that's what the passion is. But just to be like considered something, then you're basically just being, you're fitting into society's like opinion of you. Like it's nothing to do with who you are at all.
There's value with standards of like, okay, this person's hit this time, they are one of the best, or like they're the best or whatever. That's important. And I think there should be winners at races. It's not everyone's a winner. Like I think that it's important to have these time standards, but I also think it's important to remember where starting points are for people. And to think, 3 years ago, I wasn't even doing track. Like I literally I just started doing my first track workout a little over 3 years ago. And so it's more about like how far someone manages to go and transform over a certain period of time. That's the focus, and that's the important thing. Instead of somebody just saying, well, you're not the best of the best. But
or it's like the meritocracy kind of vibe too. It's sort of like you love running, you love your relationship with running, you love talking about running, you love making it a very central part of your life, you love to communicate with other people in the running community that have similar interests, and that's what you're passionate about, and you love it. I think where it can become bad is when someone's like, oh, I'm better than this person because I can run faster, or I'm worse than this person because I run slower, and thinking in those terms. I mean, you can say like, you're not going to win the race, or this person always wins the race. They're faster. They're not as fast. But in the context of like self-worth, like it's not healthy, right? Because
it's the same.
It's just like maybe they're just naturally faster. Like their muscles are put into their legs, so they're faster.
And it's the same with anything. So even as like, it has to be, you're doing what you're doing what you love. You have to be doing what you love. Yeah. And that's like, so even with modeling, which is a weird example, but like, you're only as good as your last job, or with a show too, you're only as good as your last gig. Like this idea that like it's fleeting if you're really depending your worth on what other people are perceiving you as, versus how you feel about it inside. Yeah. And I noticed that with anything, it's just it can't be dependent on the external perception of what you are. Yeah. But like you say, like the love of running, that's the thing that I'm so excited about. And so it's not about like the specific times. Yeah.
Like with music, it's like, what is a professional musician? Is it a musician who is like never plays out of tune, shows up at sessions and like nails it all the time? Is it a musician who, because there could be musicians like that who actually don't do it for a living. When the session comes up, they play it and they nail it, and they do other things for a financial supplement or primary financial means for their career. So are they not a professional anymore, even though they could play alongside other quote unquote professionals that maybe just do that as their only thing? So it's like, what is its definition, and does it matter?
Yeah. And I think that that's something that I'm noticing, and it was something that stuck with me, was just getting that kind of comment and then trying to bounce back. But going back to this idea of having a strong mentor, people that you look up to guide and keep you on the path. I feel like that alone or thinking about what my mentor would do in situations has helped me so much with lately with like all of the writing gigs and career pivot that I've been doing. And specifically with the project that I'm working on this weekend, shooting for a really huge running company where I kind of just pitched out of nowhere. Like I had kind of always heard about certain writers talking about this pitching process or the behind the scenes of just relentlessly reaching out to editors, constantly pitching your ideas, and then one day it will catch. Okay. And that's been happening. Like it's kind of crazy to see how just putting myself out there, it finally is landing. And I think that so much of that goes back to just like actually listening to everybody talking about how it's not an overnight success kind of a thing. You have to just keep putting yourself out there. And I'm seeing it.
It's like that AA saying about control. What's you say it?
Accept the things you cannot change. Are you talking about the Serenity Prayer?
Yeah, that's 100% always it, right?
Yeah, and well, so for people who don't know, in Alcoholics Anonymous, which I guess I'm breaking my anonymity right now, but one of the things that we say at the end of every meeting is usually at the end of every meeting is the Serenity Prayer, which is grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, and the wisdom to know the difference. But that courage to change the things we can, that's where you take action on impulses in my interpretation of it.
And frame of mind too, right? Because like if you are in an open mind frame set, like in a welcoming mindset, then there's opportunities coming all the time that we would never notice or realize. And I think people that have a positive, like can find that positive outlook, and realize like wherever they are, probably like I'm thinking of it from a more objective perspective. Like just there's, especially in a city like New York, I mean, you're bumping into people all the time. You're meeting new, interesting folks, and there's just situations that sort of arise. Like there are like millions of opportunities, and if you aren't open to the possibility of something that might be outside of this very, very specific narrow path that you might have had set for yourself internally of like, this is what I want to do and this is how it's going to go, it probably won't work out that way. But like if you love writing and you want to be a writer
and you have to keep doing it,
and you don't, there's some organizations like no, you're not, we don't want you to write for us.
Do you know how many people told me that I needed to like, oh, you don't have a degree, this and that. Yeah. And honestly, I'm not trying to like toot my own horn and like feel like I'm not trying to be egocentric with it, but I really do think that if you just keep doing the thing, opportunities come your way. And what you're saying too, of like being in New York and just being perceptive to these possibilities and being in the right place at the right time because you're doing the thing you love and staying like keeping the wheels greased and writing every day and constantly pitching. I feel like that's something that I've been seeing work. But and all of that goes back to having the clear head to recognize opportunities when they come.
Yeah. And also realize that, life is going to have its ups and downs, and just to try to stay as open-minded and positive and grateful when things are not going so well.
And that's another thing.
Things in perspective. And like, that's for me, like going back to like sort of role models, like, a question I would have for you is like, what are some of those characteristics that you gravitate to in a role model? Because I know for me, it really is that when things aren't going well, or it's like kind of like high stress situation, it's when someone is able to be like in the flow state still and like working through it. And like, I don't know why I always said it's like ghost riding the whip, which is like this weird saying because like it doesn't really mean what it's supposed to mean. So there's like this West Coast like hip hop, like some songs, there's a hip hop song, a rap song called Ghost Riding the Whip, and that's when you
ghost riding or writing?
Riding. Okay, yeah. Ghost riding the whip. And what that actually means is that you're listening to music in your car and you're in the driver's seat and you just decide to like jump out of the driver's seat and dance next to your car with no driver in it and just like dance.
Is your car parked?
No, your car's moving too, and like you're dancing.
Oh, I've seen people do this on like TikTok or something.
Yeah, I'm sure. It's like cool. Ghost riding the whip. And so like for me, that's like the flow state in life when you're able to like ghost ride the whip. It's
awesome.
like you're going. It's like, all right, I got this.
That.
I can
totally
dance right next to my car. It's all cool.
That's
and then,
exactly how I feel this weekend with this project that I'm working on, where it's kind of just, it's going. There's a deadline. It's coming. I'm seeing the deadline getting closer and closer, and I'm like, I have to just kind of keep dancing alongside the moving car with no driver.
Yeah, so I'm always like, when I see people like in that flow state, I'm like, yeah, you're ghost riding the whip. They're like, what are you talking about? I'm like, I don't really know what I'm talking about either, but it just seems like the right thing to say.
That makes a lot of sense to me in the weirdest way. But yeah, since we've kind of touched on it a little bit, I feel like it would be interesting to talk about something.
Yeah, you know, I'm you know, speaking of, I guess, ghost riding the whip, how's I saw that you're got this coin from.
Oh yeah, where did you see that I got the coin?
I think you put it on Instagram, but maybe it was one of the
okay.
It was like
my close friends.
Close friends.
my 12 special
Am I giving
people
away
in my
that
life?
you have like a close
friends on Instagram? Well, so anyway, I did.
Circle.
I passed a recovery milestone. With speaking of AA in recovery, and I've brought you to AA before, even though you're not. You're not an alcoholic.
I created the most awkward situation the first time that I showed up at AA.
I brought Justin to AA, and I said, well, so AA is a really big part of my life, and there are some meetings that are considered open meetings where you don't have to be an alcoholic to go. You can just be adjacent to the alcoholic
kind of supportive
community.
of the community.
So it kind of shows the people on the outside, this is what she's doing on the inside, sitting in church basements, saying the Serenity Prayer, crying. But anyway, so I brought Justin, and we went into this meeting, and I was kind of giving him a lay of the land of like how to be. And I was like, just don't say anything. Just pass. You don't have to say anything. Sure enough, it took like 5 minutes before Justin's giving his first and last name, even though it's anonymous.
That's the part
saying how he knows me. He's like, oh, it's my friend. And it's like,
I didn't really get the whole anonymous part. Yeah.
But anyway, that's what I'm totally breaking my anonymity by even talking about it. But, which we're not really supposed to do. But that said, it's like it's fine. It's fine.
Okay. Sorry.
It's, you know, for the greater good of talking about Alcoholic Anonymous, it's to say that, hey, I'm someone in it. So then maybe somebody out there can be like, oh, well, she's in it. Maybe I should be in it. Or it's okay for me to be in it. But that said, so I passed this recovery milestone recently, and that was getting my 90 days back from a relapse, which I'm being very transparent about because I had over 2.5 years in the rooms. That's when we met. I was already I was very committed to my recovery, had over a year under my belt. But then push came to shove, or it was a slippery slope. Once I knew I was kind of fading, it ultimately led to a relapse, and I had to get myself back on the horse. And luckily, have 104 days back today. So yeah, I celebrated over 90 days. Over
100 days now.
Yeah, and so but like that 90-day milestone is pretty huge in the rooms because it is. There's this thing of counting days publicly. Basically, up until you get to 90, you say your day count every time, and it's a humbling experience because you're like people who know you have time sober. When you come back and you're like, I have 14 days, feels kind of hard to have to admit like I went back out there and was not working on myself or my recovery. And for someone like me, where I consider my recovery life or death, and I think a lot of us in the rooms like this, it is not a joke. Like this is something that we need to stay sober to be out there and like working on ourselves. Like we have to commit to our spiritual growth. It was a big deal, and I did like a little talk for one of these meetings, and it's a really positive thing to check that box. Okay, over 90 days back. That stuff's good. That's at the forefront of everything. So that like once I have my sobriety locked in, that's when I start to feel like I can actually go into.
You can start ghost riding the whip.
Well, that's when everything starts to fall into place. Like with writing and with music and with every other aspect of my life with work. It is that much better when I have sobriety.
Yeah. You don't want to see drunk people trying to ghost ride the whip. I'm sure there's some videos on TikTok of that, but it does not end well. I can tell you that much. You need to be like.
Yeah, I was gonna say. I thought you were gonna say you do not want to see drunk Lucie, and I was like, yeah, that too.
You definitely don't.
Anyway, well, I think we're getting to the end of the show. There's a million things we didn't talk about, but there's some things that we did talk about that I wasn't expecting, like NFTs and
got me talking
influence. But yeah, so what I
want to just do a question. You have this thing like
questions.
Anonymous questions.
We'll pop off a quick couple questions. I got a lot of anonymous questions, like I mentioned, through my Instagram, and it's like literally like all of these. Oh, I got a new one just now. I just got one right now.
Who's this Anano?
Shout me out. It's anonymous. I don't know who you are, so that's silly.
Shout.
I'm just gonna open up some random ones.
Hi me. Shouting me.
When are you going to come to Europe to do some races? I'd consider doing Berlin in 2023.
That's the easy one.
If you could go for a run with anyone, who would it be? I'll ask you that.
Oh, I thought you were just pointing and you were going to say it was me.
Oh, and you. I would do it with Justin. Justin, who would you run with?
Who would I run with? I don't know. I just like running with friends. Any of my friends, I love to.
You want to go with? I want to run with like I don't know, Barack Obama or something.
I don't know, Andre Agassi. Yeah, I don't know.
Let me see. Some of these are not that good. I'll do two more. This is not a question. Do you snore? Me, no.
I don't think I snore. Actually, I'm pretty sure I don't, because I have this app that actually records noises at night, and I don't hear a snore. I'll hear like a once in a while, but like it doesn't really.
A lot of these questions are like XXX rated. People just took the anonymous thing and ran with it.
Well, that's it's so easy to hide underneath the veil.
It's either they hate me or they're taking it to this whole other level.
It's like 4chan, but not quite as bad.
Exactly. Oh, I guess this is an easy one. How do you cook sweet potatoes? The easiest thing in the world. You just throw them in the oven, 400 degrees, an hour, boom.
Yeah. You can always tell a place where Lucie has eaten dinner because it smells like sweet potatoes.
Yeah, my roommates, I'm sure, are sick of it by now. But
yeah.
That said, thank you so much for coming on to my show and having a chat with me. I hope it didn't feel like a therapy session. Hopefully my therapy has made it so it's more like we can just be friends and not like you're my therapist. But
I don't feel like you're a therapist, you know?
So what do I usually say to close out the show?
Just be fast and ghost ride the whip.
Just be fast, just win.
Just win, sorry. That's how it ends. And ghost ride the whip.